Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March 19th meeting of the Columbia Rotary Club. We're going to go ahead and get started with our national anthem with Rusty Bass and Audrey Brown.
Blessings you've given us this day. We thank you for the much needed rain. We thank you for your goodness to us and for this food. Father, today we thank you that we are healthy and able to attend today's Rotary gathering. And we pray for comfort for members of this club that are hurting due to disease or illness. We humbly ask that you heal our friends that are hurting according to your will. Father, bless this club today. May we, the members, live as bright lights in this fallen world. May others see you in us. And may others see that we have a hope and a future because of you, our Creator, have made it so. And we thank you for Jesus, who taught us how to live and taught us how to love. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mark. All right, everybody, cart buckets on the table, please. Hold up cart buckets. Fill them. Money in the cart buckets. All right. Breva, are you ready? Okay, I'll ask Breva Harris to come up here. She's been greeting you guys for the last 2 months, so you should know who she is if you don't already. Welcome to this special day
and it's special because you're here and you pressed your way to get to Rotary. We all have very special gifts and talents, and because of your leadership and service, so many other people have jobs, and if they didn't tell you thank you, thank you. Welcome to Rotary. We have one visiting Rotarian, Michael Otis from the East Columbia Club. Michael? Yay! And if you brought a guest with you, if you will please stand, Mrs. Catherine Davis will come around and bring you the mic.
Hi, I'm Adam Jordan. My guest today is Dr. Rebecca Van Loxen. You may recognize her from the presentation she gave a couple weeks ago. She's an economist with Acuitas Economics.
Hi, my name is John Denise, and I've got my guest today, Jeff Lawler, who's with Caldwell Banker Real Estate. He's a super community activist. More importantly, he's the two-time defending bocce ball champion to support Special Olympics. He's won this thing 2 years in a row, so Jeff Lawler.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Jordan, the Executive Director of the American Red Cross, and I'm happy to have Stephanie White here with me. She's the Director of Development for the Palmetto region. I don't know any other skills she has to compete with that.
Well, thank you all, and remember next week, invite somebody and bring somebody. Welcome to Rotary.
Thank you, Veriva. Veriva and I were invited last week. We had a fun time last Monday. Richland, Lexington, District 5 invited us to come and be on a panel with their Building Bridges program, and it was a group of amazing high school students from Dutch Fork High School who had all manner of leadership questions from, you know, let's talk about your first job to, you know, how would you handle this situation. So I felt a whole lot better about the youth of America after I did that. It was a pretty amazing group of people. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about golf. April 23rd, if you guys haven't heard already, we have our golf tournament, and I'm assuming that y'all haven't heard already because we are really lacking in participation from this crowd, so I'm hoping that that changes. And Andy, will you stand up for just a minute? Andy Shane, he's one of our newest Rotary members, and he is the volunteer coordinator, and he needs some help. So if you are interested in being there, contact Andy, and I will make sure that you have his information this afternoon. I'll send it out to all of you. So Andy, thanks for what you're doing with that. And I'm going to ask Carl Byers to come up here, and he'll tell you all about it.
Thank you, Carrie. Good afternoon. Okay, quick pop quiz. You fall in one of two groups. First group, you didn't have anything better to do. This is your favorite place to eat. That's why you're here today. 0. Second group, you're healthy enough to be here. It's a special day. That's why you're here. You love Rotary, you love the fellowship, and you love to make a difference. Show me. Yay, I'm talking to the right crowd, because I've got an opportunity for you. So, you know, I came here a couple of weeks ago with 2 messages. I have 3 today. Save the date, April 23rd at Windermere. Participate, because we have a number of different ways to participate, and I'll go over those. And thank you. Thank you in advance for your participation, and thank you in arrears for all the support you've given the tournament over the years. So to participate, you can come play, and I think that's one of the best ways to bring a potential guest or a friend. Tom Gannon and I always bring a guest, introduce them to the club. That's just a fun day to be with your fellow Rotarians and also to introduce them to your other fellow Rotarians. But when you do play, just a little bit of that goes toward our proceeds. We have door prizes, we have first place prizes. All of the play supports that. The real money that we raise is in the sponsorships. So on your table is a flyer. You can fill it out for your teams, but most importantly, pick a way to participate as a sponsor. There's all different ways. There's a title sponsor. We're still looking for a title. Gold sponsor at $1,000. Silver sponsor at $500. Bronze sponsor at $250, and Palmetto sponsor at $100. We'll talk about these more, but find the way that you're going to participate. We're after 100% participation from the club. That's not too much to ask. It's your fundraiser. So we look forward to seeing you or hearing about your participation in whatever way works for you. Save the date, participate. Thank you.
All right, so there's lots to do. There's lots of golf carts to drive and probably some beer to drink and lots of ways to have fun that day. So I hope everybody does participate. And now we have such a treat. We have Ms. Dot Ryle coming up to do Health and Happiness for us.
Well, good afternoon. Hi, everybody. I love the opportunity to get up here and talk to my fellow Rotarians. It's always a pleasure for me to be asked to do this because I love my Rotary Club, having been in here since 1988. In that first group of females that came in, and I can tell you ladies, it was a little different back then. But it's grown, and there are more of us here now, and we are our fellow Rotarians. And I can tell you Jim Reynolds reminded me of that my first day at Rotary. I'm talking about Jim Reynolds Sr. I sat at the table that later became known as the Dunbar table, but I didn't know that you needed to be invited. And I didn't realize until I sat down that there were place cards. So I can tell you, as you are listening, you know that things have changed. But Rotary had started, and I guess the person who had the place card didn't show up because nobody came and said, "Would you please move?" And I didn't know the people sitting around me. I also had not had a fireside chat. So I didn't know that that was a table you didn't sit at unless you were invited. So I said to Mr. Reynolds, after I went around the table and they were all kind of raising their eyebrows at me, I said, Mr. Reynolds, how long have you been in this club? Well, I'm a charter member. I said, oh, how exciting. Well, you've seen a lot of changes. Some good and some not so good. I said, well, I don't know what you're referring to, but I can tell you that I'm honored to be here. I said, I've been a Rotarian for years, and I'm a little over a Rotarian. I'm ready to be a Rotarian. And he said, good for you. So then, at the end of Rotary, Mr. Reynolds turned to me and he said, I'm proud to have you as a fellow Rotarian. He said, you're not only interesting to talk to, you're good to look at. So it's always a pleasure for me to be here and remind all of us that we are fellow Rotarians and we're in this together and we're in it for the betterment of our community. So now I'll share a little healthy updates with you all that were given to me this morning. But first I wanted to start, and Steve Ham, I'm going to put you on a spot here because we all are anxious for an update on JT. And if you all remember, back a few years ago, and I remember it distinctly, Steve Ham spoke to us and he told us about his walk through cancer and how JT stood by his side and went with him to Houston and went through the chemo with him and gonged the bell with him, if I remember correctly. So Steve, would you give us an update on our beloved JT?
JT is now in his third week at Richland Memorial. He has been diagnosed with acute leukemia. He has been through actually he's in his second round of chemo right now. They're waiting on some tests that they're going to do on Friday. He's going to need a bone marrow transplant. His brother has volunteered. The chances of that being a match are fairly decent. Actually, I called my doctor because of my cancer experience to find out if I could be a donate, and they told me no. I was very disappointed. But anyway, he is tired. He is not taking visitors. He is tired, but I do want you to know he's got the J.T. Gandolfo spirit. And I love giving him a bad time. Mary is with him all the time, but we all seek that you share your precious prayers with J.T. and his family. He's a fighter. God is right. When I was going through my cancer experience, I was going out from my last round, actually, of radiation. I had very, very high levels of radiation that they didn't do in South Carolina. And JT, I call him John, he calls me Stephen. He always has. He says, I'm going with you to Texas. I said, John, you don't need to do that. Stephen, I'm going. I said, John, you don't need to do that. And he says, you don't seem to understand. I'm not asking for your permission. That don't sound like the JT you know. But anyway, his spirits are strong. He is a man of great faith. But I know it gives him great comfort. I told him I've talked to lots of people. And I said to him, there are rivers of prayers flowing in your direction. And anyway, he's a great fella and one of the dearest friends that I have.
Thank you so much. And I think right now we should take a moment and bow our heads and say a prayer for JT.
God, may I say one thing prior to that? I'm the youngest of 4 boys. The brother Harry, right in front of me in the birth order, went through this 2 years ago. Because of age, I was the only brother that was tested as a bone marrow. I was a 50-50 match. With the age, anything over 60, ruled out. They went into the pool. There were 4 perfect matches, and Harry is completely cancer-free. So prayer works.
And I believe it. Let's pray for him. Dear God, we ask you to bless JT. We ask you to put your healing hand on him. And Lord, let him feel the love that is coming from this room today in the prayers. And God, we ask if it's your will, you find that perfect match. And we have JT up and running with all that energy that he has. And we thank you for the service he gave this club and pray that we will have it back. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you all for that. So now let me give you the rest of the report. Okay, Tom Persons is back. Tom's been out with viral pneumonia. So we're glad to have you back, Tom. I talked to Jamie Harpoolian this morning because I wanted to check on her father, Charles Lundla. Many of you know him. I think he was the last survivor of the Dunbar table. He is 97. He married his caregiver, who I think is like maybe 50. And she is taking wonderful care of him. And I thought you would like to know that. So if you're, get in that position, hire a good-looking caregiver. Rusty and I have been trying to check on Diane Chunnis. I know that she is having some health issues, but we don't have a direct report on her. But just keep Diane in your thoughts and prayers also. Amy Stone, we have a good report on Amy. Remember Mac Stone and the club, and they've retired and living in Beaufort. And she has brain cancer, but she's in remission, and she's doing well, and they send their love to the club, and she is a miracle, so we're thankful for that. Ed Davis's wife is diagnosed with cancer, but she is doing better. Richard Belsa is in the hospital with pneumonia, but I think someone said he was going home today. So now I think we need to go to happiness. And I think we all felt happy. when we were saluting our flag this morning. Andrea Brown is amazing. When she sang the national anthem today, didn't you feel like you wanted to shout with her? It was so beautiful. And I had said to her, belt it out for me today. And she did indeed do so. So we appreciate her. She brings happiness. And I'm sure most of you saw the paper yesterday, 20 under 40. The 20 outstanding young people under 40 years of age. And did you see that we had 2 Rotarians? Meredith, would you stand, please? And Stephen. Bravo to both of you. I know when I looked at it, I thought, way to go. And we're proud of you as Rotarians. You represent us well. You made us feel proud. And congratulations to Daddy back there. Is he back there? Tom, I know you're proud next to your daughter back there. And you all might want to. Whoops. I was going to show you her beautiful picture, but...
You can't miss it.
Oh, here it is. The centerfold. Oh, and Debbie McDonald celebrated 33 years anniversary with the Boy Scouts of America. Congratulations, Debbie. Well, I think I've covered health and happiness. Oh, how? Yes, the prayer breakfast, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Bob Crutchfield's not here today, I think, but Wednesday mornings, 7:30 at the Embassy Suites is the annual South Carolina State Prayer Breakfast. We cannot put Dot and Mark on the program, even though those prayers this morning and this afternoon were very, very powerful. But if anybody's up, you can go to scprayerbreakfast.com. Still get tickets online, and we'd love to see you there Wednesday morning.
Have I got a few minutes left? 3 minutes? You got 3 minutes. Okay, I have 3 minutes. So I'm going to tell you some Dot stories. I was thinking with the program today and the program that we had last week, it was kind of like memory lane for me. I wanted to tell you all a little bit about the background on adventure. You got the present update, but I can tell you the before, and now you're getting the after from last week. I can tell you all that back in the late 90s, a young woman walked into my office, very shy, I did not know her, and she walks over and introduces herself, and she said, my name is Sue Oliver. She said, I just moved to Columbia from Ohio. My husband is a doctor, and he's with Lexington Medical, and we just moved here. And she said, everywhere I lived as a child, we had a children's museum. And she said, I dreamed of the time I could take my children to a children's museum. And she said, of course, there's not one here. And she said, I've been all over town. I went to the State Museum, I went to the Museum of Art, I've been to the Chamber, I've been to all these places, and nobody pays me any attention. But she said, in several of those places, they said, maybe you need to go talk to Dot Royal. Well, welcome, welcome. She came in, and with that message, I said, well, you know what? That'd be a wonderful thing for us to think about. And so that's what I did. I said, let me do some research and let me think about it. She said, I don't know my way around. I don't know anybody. I don't know how I can help, but I'd really like to see it happen. So I did research, and I thought, indeed, you know, we could do something like that here in the city. And I thought, now I need to put some players together, some young parents that would have the passion to see this happen. And I thought about Catherine Frankstone. Catherine had worked for me and was out having babies. So I called Catherine, I had her come in, and I said, would you be willing to help start progress toward a children's museum? She said, I would love it. I have 3 boys. They need somewhere to go and something to do. And I said, okay, but first would you bring your mom and dad in? Who told me earlier, Dot raises money? So Catherine brought her parents in, Holcomb and Barbara. All of a sudden I've lost the last name. Thomas, thank you. And told him what we wanted to do, and he pulled out his checkbook and said, how much do you need? And that was the startup money for the venture. And we housed them in the Cultural Council office. Jim, I know Jim Smith, Jack Hupp, all of my former chairmen remember that. We had 2 businesses, and then it grew to 3 or 4 that were coming out of my office. But we gave them free rent and service for 2 years as an incubator, and then sent them out on their own. And this is how things start. For those of you 40 under 20, 20 under 40 or whatever, think about dreams and opportunities, and the opportunity to open the door and make a difference in your city. And that's how it starts. It starts with a dream. And I have tens of other stories I'm going to tell you today, but I think my time is out, and I have to take one more for Johnny. Johnny Folsom. I've known Johnny for a long, long time, and I was delighted to know that he was going to be here today. And when I walked down that memory lane, I thought back to the time I was a stay-at-home mom. And overnight, I was handed a position that gave me responsibility because a paycheck came with it. Up until then, I had worked 6 years as a volunteer to start Children's Hospital, had served on all these boards. Now I'm a volunteer again, which means that if I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. But when you start getting paid to do something, you have to do it. And so I went from chairman of the board overnight to director of the Arts Council. And I know most of you have heard of Hootie Johnson. Hootie was an incredible supporter of the arts in our community, but he did it behind the scenes. And Hootie was my right arm. We were neighbors. And so we got to know each other, and he and Marie were friends. And so when he would do a project in the community, Hootie would come and say, Doc, come down here and do this. And so Hootie called me and he said, well, I see you stepping into that position. That's a good thing. You need to do that. They need help. He said, who's going to be your chairman? And I said, well, since I'm stepping down, Sam Tenenbaum was stepping up, but Sam has another commitment, so we're going to have to pull from the executive board. And I said, we're looking at Bob Selman. And Bob at that time was with Collier's Keenan, right? And so Hootie said, call him up. So that boy likes to play golf, doesn't he? I said, yes, he does. He said, well, tell him to meet me at the Augusta National on Thursday and bring his clubs, 1 o'clock, don't be late. I said, okay. So I called Bob Selman. Bob said, you got to be kidding me. I said, no, I mean it. He said, you mean I'm going to play Augusta National with Hootie Johnson? I said, looks that way, yeah. He said, what's this about? I said, I don't know, I guess he'll tell you. And so the story goes on. Bob got there, and he got there on time, and they played. And we didn't have cell phones then. So that night, I got a phone call. It's Bob. He said, well, Dot, I'm your new chairman. I said, oh, what a surprise. That's wonderful, Bob. He said, that's not the real story. I said, what is? He said, I got a hole-in-one at the Augusta National today. I said, you did not. He said, yes, I did. Honestly, I did not believe him. So I called Hootie. I said, Hootie. He said, yeah, he did. And so there are a lot of perks to volunteer work, you guys. And follow the right people, and you'll enjoy. When opportunity knocks, take a peek, say a prayer, and open the door. Thank you.
Boy, that's a tough act to follow. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on with our speaker, and I'm going to ask President-elect Stephen Creech to come up and introduce him.
Thank you, President Carey. Thank you, Dot. I'm really honored to introduce our speaker today, Johnny Folsom. I had a long bio I was going to read to you, and it's certainly full of his accomplishments. I'm going to shorten it a little bit. I just want to say I moved to Columbia 10 years ago. I met Johnny Folsom when I was working at Providence Hospital. He was on our board. He's a past chairman of the board of Providence, and he's just a class act. Everybody in this room knows that from the number of people that came up to see him, and his family has had a tremendous impact on our community. Certainly Johnny has, and has had a huge impact on our club. So Johnny's a graduate of Washington and Lee. He has an MBA from the University of South Carolina. He began his career in banking here in Columbia in 1974 with South Carolina Federal, and in '93 the bank was sold to First Union. He went over to take over the Keenan Company, which is now Colliers International, as their president and CEO. Colliers is the largest independently owned commercial real estate firm in South Carolina, with offices in Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charleston. He is incredibly active in the community, as many of you know. He's been the past chair of the board of Hammond School, Providence Hospital, the South Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, University Associates, and the United Way of the Midlands. He's been recognized by the United Way of the Midlands as its Humanitarian of the Year, and by the Columbia Chamber as its Ambassador of the Year. And he's also been recognized by his alma mater, Washington and Lee, as a distinguished alumnus and an honorary member of ODK. Chief among his current civic activities are the Salute from the Shore, which I think we're all familiar with. Johnny is a founder of that and a current board member. He and his son, Andy, who I work with, started that with several others 9 years ago to pay tribute to the men and women of the United States military every 4th of July. He was a member of this club 25 years ago during his banking days. His father was a member of this club until a year and a half ago when he passed away. He's married to his wife, English. They have 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and please join me in a warm Rotary welcome for Johnny Folsom.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm moving this to a very specific location so you can hear me. Stephen referenced my former membership of the Columbia Rotary, and he referenced Dad. Dad, I've been told that since things have been rearranged, used to sit over here, but back the last time I was here, the podium was on the other end, and he was still in the same corner, just way away. So those of you who are new to the Rotary Club, Columbia Rotary Club, won't know this, the rest of you will. He's the guy that sat in the back and screamed at the speaker, "I can't hear you." So, I'm going to do my best today to make Dad proud. So, if you can't hear me, let me know. You referenced to Salute from the Shore. Stephen and I were talking about topics, and that is a good topic if you haven't had it sometime, to have a speaker to come talk about Salute from the Shore, because it is an incredible initiative that we think has traction all across South Carolina in the effort to honor the men and women of the military. When Stephen and I first spoke about me making a presentation to you, I was thinking about commercial real estate and talked to you about commercial real estate in Columbia, the Midlands, and across South Carolina, and then I just couldn't put an interesting or fun twist on industrial and office vacancy rates or retail rental rates or anything of that nature, so I said there's got to be something else. And in fact, we decided that I would talk about a topic that you may not know about. And then looking around the room, there are 2 or 3 that know full well what I'm talking about. This topic has significantly more impact, I can assure you, on the Midlands and, in fact, the state of South Carolina than commercial real estate rental rates. But it really is under the radar, and it's time now to expose it more broadly to the community, and the Columbia Rotary is a great place. We believe, as the business community, that this particular initiative about which I am going to discuss may be the most important business initiative in the past couple of decades in moving the needle forward for the Midlands. And the initiative about which I'm going to talk is called the Regional Competitive Collaboration. You'll see there. The Regional Competitive Collaboration is a concept that was established by the Midlands Business Leadership Group, and I'm going to refer that very long name now going forward as MBLG. We got that ball rolling about 2 years ago. So let me first tell you what the MBLG is. It was founded about 15 years ago as a coalition of 40+ Midlands CEOs or executives of the Midlands' larger employers and who regularly convene to work on issues that are of importance to the Midlands, but not typically being addressed by others. See Ted Creech over here, Scott Campbell's in the back. They're members of the MBLG as well. The MBLG has a long track record of operating below the radar, but always partnering with other organizations to address community needs that don't have a sponsor. There are a lot of them, but let me just give you one example, and I'll try to run through this quickly, Dot, because this clock is here and I can see how much time I have left. Transitions is a great example of an initiative that was fostered by the MBLG. You all know Transitions is the Homeless Service Center located on Main and in Elmwood. Very quickly, about 12 years ago, the then mayor of Columbia and council asked a group of about 10 or 11 individuals to volunteer to find a site to construct a homeless service center, full well recognizing that homelessness needed to be addressed in the Midlands. It was the right human services thing to do, but we weren't doing it as well as we needed to with the growing population. That group got together. I was part of that group. We met for 9 months. We followed the model that was prescribed by City Council to the T. We ultimately found what we thought was the perfect location, and per our instructions, we took it to City Council and presented it to them, and they voted 7-0 against it. Right. You know why? You know what, anybody know what NIMBY means? Not in my backyard. So it was in the backyard of one of the 7 council people, and the other 6, true to form, voted with that person because they didn't want it in their backyard. I vividly remember the next executive committee meeting of the MBLG, and with great frustration and disappointment, we said, we just can't let this sit on the sidelines. We have homeless people in the Midlands that need our attention. They need to be given an opportunity to move to a life of productivity. And so at that point we said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to gather together as many stakeholders as we can find and go about an initiative without the assistance of the government to start with. And I'm seeing Mike in the back over there, Mr. Beedinger. He's very helpful in this regard. We gathered together the faith-based component. Lots of churches were involved. We gathered together the organizations that provide services to the homeless. We got the business community involved, and most particularly we got the United Way under the leadership of Mac Bennett involved. We found a location very quickly. It was determined that the Salvation Army was going to reassess their mission, but guess what they had? They had an exception to zoning which allowed for the housing of homeless, and so the city couldn't push us back on that. So we got the location. Then we raised $12.5 million in 6 months. And I would say a lot of you understand this, the Jack Hupson all of the world, the Joe Andersons. That's about the fastest that $12.5 million has ever been raised in this community. And the rest is history. There now is a very attractive facility at Elmwood in Maine, and I'm told they have transitioned at least 1,800 people from homelessness to lives of productivity, jobs, rental units, and own their own homes. So that's just an initiative under the radar that the MBLG played. I wanted you to know about that so you can understand the group. Now, probably the most extensive thing the MBLG has ever pursued. Now, somebody let me know if the right slide's not there because I can't see it too well. This next initiative that we are pursuing is not going to be under the radar. It's the Regional Competitiveness Collaboration. So how was that established? 2 years ago, a number of us at the MBLG reviewed the Midlands Regional Competitive Report. Here's a 2017 version. And this is authored by professors at USC's Moore School of Business. This is the 2017 is the 4th edition. It gave us considerable concerns when we read it. So the MBLG brought together stakeholders to identify our regional challenges, to prioritize our greatest opportunities, define the gaps, and develop an action plan. And if you want a copy of this, you can go to ingenuitysc.com and get one, and I encourage you to do so if you have any interest. One more, did I flip? Going the wrong way, probably. All right. One more.
your vision.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Steve. What we discovered from analyzing the report is that our community is chock full of talented, smart leaders who are committed to making the Midlands the best it can be. But we lack vision, we lack focus, and we lacked organization. And also, we needed to pursue an effort to accelerate the development of the Columbia area to attract and retain top talent, provide great job offerings, and improve the livability of the community. Now, this competitiveness report that you see on the screen, this is the 2017 version, and what it does is compare the Midlands to 9 peer and aspirational cities in 5 categories: talent, innovation, entrepreneurial and business environment, industry clusters, and that's code name for economic development, and livability. Those peer and aspirational cities are everybody's aspirational city, Raleigh, and then Augusta, Georgia, Charleston, Greensboro, High Point, that's Greenville, South Carolina, Knoxville, Lexington, Kentucky, Tallahassee, Winston-Salem. Now, this study is far more complicated than we have time to discuss today, but suffice it to say that our general ratings of the Midlands compared to the peer group averaged 7, with 1 being the best and 10 being the worst. Specifically, in 2017, the study that was just published, we ranked 7th in talent. That's the ability to attract, develop, and retain your talent in your community. 7th in innovative capacity. That's the region's capacity to support the creation of new knowledge to generate new ideas, products, and processes, and commercialize them. 9th in entrepreneurial and business environment, and that's our region's ability to commercialize innovation and to provide an environment that supports the growth of business ventures. 8th in industry clusters, our strength and ability to recruit new businesses and to grow businesses in industries which are competitive on an international scale. And finally, and our best ranking was 4 for livability. That's our region's ability to attract and retain talent through building a dynamic live, learn, work, and play environment. Here's the bad news. We ranked number 2 in 2016. Which is an example of how if you don't have an action plan, the results are going to be diminished for all ratings year after year. So here's the problem that the MBLG concluded that exists. The Midlands, by comparison to these other 9 cities, ranks a whole lot less favorably than any of us and anybody in this room would like. And the reality is that each of these peer cities we know have already engaged and are currently involved in projects to enhance innovation, livability, entrepreneurism, talent, and so on. So disturbingly, if we do nothing, our average of 7 maybe becomes 8 next year, 9 the next year, and so on and so on. Now, our community has always been blessed with very talented people who care, but the concern is that for a couple of decades, we haven't really been focused, at least in these categories, as our peer cities have. So I'm going to talk about phase 1 of what we have accomplished at the MBLG through our involvement with a lot of other stakeholders. The MBLG created a process to pursue action with regard to moving the Midlands forward. And one of our very own, David Pancall, the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, stepped up and volunteered to chair our action initiative. And an incredible number of other volunteers signed on as well. So to get started under David's direction, the MBLG partnered with Ingenuity South Carolina to help us conduct a process to bring community partners and leaders together to identify our challenges, define the gaps that existed, prioritize our biggest opportunities, promote well-defined action, and accelerate the development of Columbia as a region that attracts and retains top talent, produces vibrant job offerings, and provides necessary resources to improve livability for all people. That effort was launched 14 months ago, January of 2007, in front of about 150 or so people at the USC Alumni Association. So during phase one, we formed 5 working groups, each of which were mapped to those 5 indicators that I listed with you before. Through these 5 groups, we completed 37 meetings, 110 participants. So if you assume those meetings lasted about an hour and a half each, and every one that I was in was a lot longer than that, that's 6,100 hours of man-woman hours that were devoted to phase one. Now, I'm not sure what an appropriate hourly rate would be, but that is well over $1 million in volunteer hours that were devoted to phase one of this initiative. At the end of the day, there were 25 independent recommendations that we believed could possibly be achieved in a 12-month period of time. So we then conducted a series of open public meetings with stakeholders, presented the 25 recommendations, and reduced those to the 7 that we felt could really move the needle and help the community gain traction against our peer cities. So now I'm going to show you what those 7 initiatives are. The first is the Riverfront. The Riverfront Initiative is chaired by Bill Boyd of Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd and Luke Kennedy of Nephron Pharmaceutical. Anybody know Luke? We're struggling to get some energy out of that lady, but yeah. Unbelievable. Now, we believe that the Congaree River is our greatest natural resource, clearly a unique and defining characteristic of Columbia and the Midlands as compared to these other cities, but we've only minimally tapped that resource. So we've established formal collaborations with property owners and numerous stakeholders along the river from Gervais Street to Catawba. And we're going to address the design, funding, river cleanup, development, and operation of a regional waterfront amenity along the river. And the results of this collaboration will be extraordinary. Think of the implications for recreation, entertainment, and commerce. The second initiative we've titled Marketing and Branding. This is chaired by Tommy Suggs of Keenan Suggs Hub International. Their charge is to design and implement a solution for regional branding that includes funding, ownership, coordination, collaboration, and regional buy-in. They're asking the questions: who are we? How do we describe our community? And unfortunately, you get so many different answers to those 2 questions that you struggle to figure out how we're going to get our arms around those questions. What was really clear is that the branding called Famously Hot, everybody remember that? Yeah, Kendall, you remember that, don't you? Didn't I see Matt walk in? Yeah. Well, that has not been favorably viewed by a lot of people who live in the Midlands, and maybe more importantly, the people that we're trying to attract to the Midlands. So we need to get our arms on the right branding for the Midlands. Some have suggested that we have an inferiority complex in the Midlands, and I don't know if that's true, but I believe we do have a tendency to undersell ourselves. And this branding initiative is going to be directed at helping us understand who we are and branding ourselves appropriately. The third initiative is economic development, and I happen to be the chair of that group. Although I'm the chair, I merely serve as the coordinator or the moderator of a group of the Midlands' most accomplished economic development experts, including attorneys, site consultants, and the county's and the city's economic development professionals and staff. This slide, I think, shows Richmond and Lexington County, but one of the very first things we realized is that was too narrow in scope, and we need to be thinking about a geographical area that resembles the entire MSA. Our job, as we've defined it, is to evaluate economic development in the Midlands and the model that's used, and to make recommendations, if appropriate, for improving our model to ensure greater success. We're exploring the best-of-class models in all of the peer cities and in Raleigh that I've shown you on the list. as well as Des Moines, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and a few others. And our goal in looking at these best-of-class models is to ascertain what the most effective economic development model would be in Columbia with regard to our mission, the structure, the roles it plays, governance, and funding models. Number 4 is coordinating council. I didn't know what this was to start with until it was explained to me by others who were much more involved in other cities than I. But the coordinating council group is going to be co-chaired by Mike Kratz, who's the CEO of First Community Bank, and another co-chair who we will name pretty soon. Their job is to create and convene a coordinating council, which, by the way, is a group that's prevalent in most every other significant city with which we compete. Among the participants on the coordinating council will be representatives of the MBLG, our chambers of commerce, our regional economic development organizations, downtown development organizations, Matt, nonprofits, and others. Now, one of the many primary responsibilities that they're going to pursue is to actively promote the enhancement of young leadership in our community, which may have been the single issue that jumped out from each of those different committees consistently. We think it's one of our biggest gaps. We've had some names referenced today. Dot referenced Hootie Johnson, but let's go back to the 60s and 70s and looking around the room, a few of you fall in that category as I do. But we think about Kirkman Finley. We think about Key Powell, John Warren, Hootie, Bob Royal, and others, including a lot of members of the Columbia Rotary, and they were our 40-something-ish leaders back in those days. So where are those leaders today? They're out there. There's Meredith, there's Stephen, and there are others, like Meredith and Stephen for sure. But if you look at the leadership and the membership of many of our civic and public organizations, and if you can look at the leadership of the boards of some of our private commercialized industries, they are just not as prevalent as they were 20 and 30 years ago. Now, to be specific about that, the MBLG is just as guilty. Scott, our average age probably is somewhere around 55 or 56 years old, so the MBLG is not leading the charge on youthful representation and ownership. Well, we're going to take responsibility and take a hard look at enhancing our membership with young, talented leadership. I personally believe this initiative might be the most important thing that we pursue as we're looking forward to the growth of the Midlands. The fifth is governmental collaboration. This group is chaired by James Bennett of First Citizens Bank. Their responsibility is to develop a mission to support Lexington and Columbia Chambers of Commerce to ensure greater collaboration between public entities and elected officials and the business community. We need to get everybody rolling in the same direction, and I'm just not sure that we do that like we should. And James and the presidents of these chambers, Otis Rawls and Scott and Carl Blackstone, are dedicated to making this happen. It's going to be a challenge because we're dealing with so many disparate issues in these different counties and MSAs, or sectors of our MSA. There are huge differences in population. There are differences in economic well-being. There are differences in the cost of doing business from one county to the other. But the most important thing is that we lack tangible support from one county to another or one community to another. Let me give an example of that. Let's think about if Calhoun County won a major economic development manufacturing announcement. I can tell you what would happen. The other 7 or 8 counties would just give them a little golf clap like this. What they ought to be doing is jumping up and down and giving huge high fives to celebrate the success in Calhoun County. Because you know where those jobs are coming from. They're going to be people from Lexington and Kershaw and Richland and Orangeburg and others are going to be working there. But we have this problem with celebrating the successes of one another, and we need to get over that. The sixth, and we're close to being done. I love this one because I think it's so very logical. One Stop Shop is going to be chaired by William Hubbard of Nelson Mullins. The idea is to create a one-stop shop for resources to be available to entrepreneurs and existing business leadership who are seeking assistance to grow. There's so many resources in the Midlands, but they're not coordinated, they're not readily available, and nobody really knows where to go to find these resources. Where would an entrepreneur go to get help with advancing a creative idea or creating an enterprise, a business, or commercializing that great idea? Well, USC has some incredible resources, so does Midlands Tech and others, and the leadership of those institutions are very committed to being part of the solution. In fact, I can imagine that a one-stop shop would be housed and located at the University of South Carolina. The seventh is for Matt Kennel, right, Matt? Pedestrian Connections. This is chaired by Chuck Garnett, the CEO of NBSC and Synovus, and Bill McElveen of Adams Reese. Their plan is to identify an appropriate entity to take ownership of in the design for pedestrian connections along Assembly Street, particularly at the intersections of Assembly and Lady and Assembly and Gervais. I'm told that the Gervais Assembly intersection has the highest traffic count of any intersection in the central business districts of our three cities. It's very important to connect the central business district to the Vista, but if you try crossing Assembly on foot, you're literally taking your life in your own hands, and statistics will bear that out. When this became public, many stakeholders jumped on board, including the city, Department of Transportation, City Center Partnership, a lot of special interest groups and not-for-profits. In many respects, this is going to be a long-term initiative, but there's short-term goals that this group is trying to accomplish. I'll tell you one very quickly. They have asked that a bill be filed with the legislature to allow municipalities to install traffic cams to identify drivers who break traffic laws. I think we're going to get traction on that. So why do you do that? Well, when traffic cams are there, they record drivers breaking our traffic laws, whether they're running a red light, whether they're turning right on a red where you're not supposed to. Those folks are going to get citations in the mail. They're going to have fines. Eventually, we believe that that will get traction. And that's a small, tiny step to ensuring that crossing Assembly Street, for example, will be easier and safer to do. The big deal is, how do you convert 8 lanes to 2 or 3 lanes? How do you divert traffic to another location? How do you do all these things without building a big bridge? So this group has a tall order in front of them, but they're going to make some short-term successes, I'm sure. So next steps. The work's just beginning. You've seen our 7 priorities. When these 7 are done, there'll be 5 to 7 more that we do next year. And remember, the community has young, talented people, it's got older, talented people. But if we don't start taking some action now, we are going to fall farther and farther behind our peer cities. And I don't think anybody in this room is willing to have that happen. So if you're interested or passionate about any of these issues, call me at Cottage International. I'll be happy to get you involved. Thanks so much.
All right, Johnny said he'll stick around afterwards if anybody has any questions they want to discuss with him. Thank you so much for being with us today. Enjoyed hearing about that. And we'll go ahead and end with song.